Order. The question is that the bill be now read a second time. Sir Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have before us a short bill and a relatively simple bill. But for the Labour Party, this is a very difficult bill. Mr. Speaker, I would ask that honourable members be courteous as I try to set out the position of the Labour Party in what are very difficult circumstances. I will try to set that out clearly, and I would expect people to be courteous. We're a fiercely internationalist party. We're a pro-European party. We believe that through our alliances we achieve more together than we do alone. We believe in international cooperation and collaboration. We believe in the international rule of law. These beliefs will never change. That is why we campaigned to stay in the EU. We recognise that the EU is our major trading partner and that the single market and customs union have benefited UK businesses and our economy for many years. We recognise more widely the benefits of collaborative working across the EU in fields of research, medicine, technology, education, arts and farming. And we also recognise the role the EU plays in tackling common threats such as climate change and serious organised crime. We share values and identity with the EU. But we failed to persuade. We lost the referendum. Yes, the result was close. Yes, there were lies and half-truths, none worse than the false promise of £350 million a week for the NHS. Yes, technically the referendum is not legally binding, but the result was not technical. It was deeply political. And politically, the notion that the referendum was merely a consultation exercise to inform Parliament holds no water. When I was imploring people up and down the country to vote in the referendum and vote to remain, I told them their vote really mattered, that a decision was going to be made. I was not inviting them to express a view. And although we are fiercely internationalist and fiercely pro-European, we are in the Labour Party, above all, Democrats. Had the outcome been to remain, we would have expected the result to have been honoured. And that cuts both ways. A decision was made on the 23rd of June last year to leave the EU. Two-thirds of Labour MPs represent constituencies that voted to leave. One-third represent constituencies that voted to remain. This is obviously a difficult decision. I wish the result had gone the other way. I campaigned passionately for that. But as Democrats, our party has to accept the result. And it follows, Mr. Speaker, it follows that the Prime Minister should not be blocked from starting the Article 50 negotiations. That does not mean that the Prime Minister can do as she likes without restraint from this House. Quite the opposite. The Prime Minister is accountable to this House, and that accountability is vital on the uncertain journey that lies ahead. The Prime Minister fought to prevent this House having a vote on this bill until she was forced to do so by the Supreme Court last week.
Yes, true.
The Prime Minister resisted Labour's calls for a plan and then a wider white paper until it became clear that she would lose any battle forcing her to do so. And just before Christmas, the Prime Minister was resisting giving this House a vote on the final deal. A position that she's had to adjust. That is why the amendments tabled by the Labour Party are so important. They're intended to establish a number of key principles the government must seek to negotiate during the process. including securing full tariff and impediment-free access to the single market. They're intended to ensure that there's robust and regular parliamentary scrutiny by requiring the Secretary of State to report to the House at least every 2 months on progress being made on negotiations throughout the process, and to provide documents that are being provided to the European Parliament. The amendments require the government to consult regularly with the governments of Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland throughout the Brexit negotiations. And I have recognised on numerous occasions the specific issues and concerns of those living in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and support the proposition that they should be absolutely consulted throughout the process, and those interests borne in mind. I'll press on just for a minute, and then I will take interventions. And the amendments ensure that we have laid that this House has the first say and not the last say on the deal that is proposed at the end of the Article 50 negotiations. Exactly. We're also supporting amendments. I will give way in a minute. I'll just make some progress, if I may. We're also supporting amendments in relation to workplace rights and environmental rights. And we'll be making the case that the legal state of EU nationals should be resolved before negotiations take place. Now, I do recognise the government's position in relation to EU nationals and the work that's gone on to try to have a reciprocal arrangement. That has not worked. And now the Prime Minister should act unilaterally to give assurance to those EU nationals living in this country. All honourable members, I'm sure, will have had in their surgeries EU nationals in tears about the uncertainty of their situation. I've had it at every public meeting I've had on the topic and at every surgery. I do understand the constraints, but we must now act unilaterally to secure their position. Taken together, these amendments will put real grip and accountability into the process, and the government should welcome them, not reject them out of vote. I'm going to make some progress, and I will give way. I'm mindful of the fact that 99 backbenchers want to get into this debate, and it's important on an issue such as this that I set out our position.
Just keep going.
It's important to remember what this bill does and what it does not do. It empowers the Prime Minister to trigger Article 50, no more and no less. It is the start of the negotiating process, not the end. It does not give the Prime Minister a blank cheque. And here I want to make a point, a wider point, that's not been made clearly enough so far in any of the debates that we've had. No Prime Minister, whether under Article 50 or any other provision, can change domestic law through international negotiations. That can only be done in this Parliament. If the Prime Minister seeks to change our immigration laws, she will have to do so in this Parliament in primary legislation. If the Prime Minister seeks to change our tax laws, she will have to do so in this Parliament in primary legislation. If the Prime Minister seeks to change our employment laws, our consumer protection laws, our environmental laws, she will have to do so in this Parliament in primary legislation. And if the Prime Minister seeks to change our current arrangements in Northern Ireland, if the Prime Minister seeks to change our current arrangements in Northern Ireland, Scotland or Wales, she'll have to do in Parliament in primary legislation. I will give way.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for giving way, but does he not realise that the very point of us leaving the European Union is so that this place can make decisions on those very points?
Yes. When the Secretary of State last week said that there would be many votes on many pieces of legislation in the next few years, he was not wrong. And in each of those votes, at every twist and turn, Labour will be arguing that the jobs, the economy and living standards must come first. We'll be arguing that all workers' rights, consumer rights and environmental protections derived from EU law should be fully protected, no qualifications, no limitations and no sunset clause. I will.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and he rightly points to the very necessary consultation that must take place with the devolved administrations. But on 17th of January, I asked the Secretary of State what specific discussions he has had with the North East about the impact of leaving the single market, given 58% of our exports go to the EU. Does my honourable friend share my concern that we still don't have an answer to that question, whether he's even had the discussions, as well as many other questions?
Good point. Well, I do agree, and I urge on the Prime Minister and on the Secretary of State the greatest consultation in relation to Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Each have specific areas and concerns which are well known to this House. I will.
To the Right Honourable and learned gentleman for giving way. Does he share my concerns that at the end of this process, if there is no deal that has been struck, all options must remain open, and it will be for this place and not for the government to decide what happens next?
I'm grateful for that intervention, and it is to ensure that this place has a meaningful role that Labour has tabled the amendment it has in relation to the final vote, to make sure that the issue comes here first rather than later. I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and in that spirit, does he agree with me that it's astonishing that the government have not told us when they will be publishing the white paper? And does he agree with me that that white paper should be published ahead of the committee stage of this bill, which is scheduled to be next week?
I'm grateful for that intervention. My view is clear. The white paper ought to be published as soon as possible and before the committee stage is concluded. And I hope that it will be. I'm going to make some progress, given the number of honourable members who want to come in on this debate. More broadly, Mr. Speaker, Labour will be arguing for a strong collaborative future relationship with the EU. In her Lancaster House speech, the Prime Minister said that she does not to, and I quote, seek to hold on to bits of membership as we leave. That is short-sighted, as we are now finding in relation to Euratom. Why would we want to be outside the European Aviation Safety Agency, which certifies aircraft before they're allowed to fly? Why would we want to be outside of the European Medicines Agency, which ensures all medicines in the EU are safe and effective? Why would we want to be outside Europol and Eurojust, which, as the Prime Minister and I know, are agencies that work closely together in the prevention and detection of serious crime and terrorism? The same goes for the European Environmental Agency and Euratom. We do challenge the Prime Minister on these fronts. We do ask that consideration be given to finding ways to ensure that we stay where we can within these agencies for the very obvious benefits that they bring. And we will absolutely challenge any suggestion that the Prime Minister has any authority whatsoever to rip up our economic and social model and turn the UK into a tax haven economy. So, Mr. Speaker, I come back to the vote on this bill. It is a limited vote. A vote to allow the Prime Minister to start the Article 50 process. It is not a vote on the outcome, nor is it a vote on the wider issues, which will fall to be voted on separately. But it is a vote to start the process. And, Mr. Speaker, I know there are some colleagues on the benches behind me who do not feel able to support this bill. I respect their views. Just as I respect the views of constituents who feel the same way. I also understand and recognise the anxiety of so many in the 48% who voted to remain about their future, their values and their identity. They did not vote themselves out of their own future, and their views matter as much now as they did on the 23rd of June last year. I hope the respectful approach that I've tried to adopt to colleagues and to the anxiety among the 48% is reflected across the House, and that we will see a good deal less of the gloating from those who campaign to leave than we've seen in the past. It is our duty to accept and respect the outcome of the referendum, but we remain a European country with a shared history and shared values. And it is also our duty to fight for a new relationship with our EU partners that reflects our values, our commitment to internationalism, and our commitment to an open and tolerant society. Above all, it is our duty to ensure an outcome that is not just for the 52% or the 48%, but for the 100%. That we will do. Thank you.